All right, coming to another South African poem. So, especially moving from grade 11 to grade 12, the large majority of the prescribed poems are South African. All right, I think it also matches with the history of the time. So, any of you who are taking history as a subject, you'll definitely see a similarity, a correlation. So, this particular poem was written by Jeremy Cronin. um, he is still alive, was born in 1949, South African writer, author, poet, former Deputy Minister of Transport as well. So, this poem's title is To Learn How to Speak. Now, already some of you will notice, but that's not a full sentence. Okay, to learn to speak are both infinitive verbs, infinite verbs. So, it's incomplete, and there's a reason for that. Remember, every time you study a poem and a short story, there are certain details, there are certain descriptions that are there for a purpose. So, anything that has a wiggly black line underneath it is talking about the progression of time. Anything with purple, okay, is the infinite verbs. Okay, continuation. I'll explain that later. Dark blue, the progression of language. Light blue or turquoise, languages. The dark green, progression of a river. The brown, progression of transport. There are a couple of words from number 1 to number 16, just explaining what they mean, definitions. So I'm going to read it and then I'm going to go through it with you. To learn how to speak. To learn how to speak with the voices of the land, to pass the speech in its rivers, to catch in the inarticulate grunt, stammer, call, cry, babble, tongue's knot, a sense of the stoneness of these stones, from which all words cut. To trace with the tongue wagon trails, saying the suffix of their aches in kale, pon, fontaine, in watery names that confirm the dryness of their ways. To visit the places of occlusion or the lick in a flaybank dawn, to bury my mouth in the pit of your arm, in that planetarium, pectoral beginning to nub of time, down there close to the water table, to feel the full moon as it drums at the back of my throat its cow-skinned vow, to write a poem with words like, I'm telling you, stompy, stick fast, golovan, shongololo, just boom bang, just to understand the least inflections, to voice without swallowing, syllabus born in tin shacks, to catch the 5:15 Ikwota Bust 5 Johannesburg train, to reach the low chant of mine gangs, mineral glow of our people's unbreakable resolve, to learn how to speak with the voices of this land. So you will notice the large amount of infinite verbs, and it almost seems that the whole poem is incomplete. What about to learn how to speak? What is that going to do for me? Okay, I always think of the title To Kill a Mockingbird. It's unfinished. You almost want to say To Kill a Mockingbird is illegal. To kill a mockingbird is immoral. To learn how to speak is a good thing to do, etc. Okay? To learn how to speak with the voices of this land, etc. Okay, but there's a reason for that. So, repetition, to learn how to speak with the voices of the land in the beginning and right at the end. It's like a sandwich with the meat in the middle. Okay, to learn to speak, to pass, to catch, to trace, to visit, to bury, to feel, to write, to understand, to voice, to learn, to speak. The cat is knocking my table. So, infinite verbs. Infinite verbs are continuous. If I say to you that I like to read, it's implied that there is never going to be a time in space and history that I will never not like to read. The fact that I like to do it implies that it is continuous. It is a continuous like. Okay? Then let's look at the progression of time. Okay, we've got the stoneness of the stones. We've got the wagon trails. We've got the planetarium. No, Liza. We've got the pictorial beginning of to nub of time. We've got the syllabus, Bornington shacks, train, mine. Okay, it's looking at different time periods. Okay, so if you think with the stoneness of these stones, think Stone Age, when it all began. Then you've got wagon trails referring to the Great Trek. So when the Dutch moved up from the coastal areas more inland of South Africa, okay? You've then got a planetarium. So building a planetarium requires quite a bit of technology, okay? Understanding of the stars and the constellations. No, I am so sorry about that. It turns out she really, really likes external mic cords. So planetarium, you need a lot of technology for that. Pictorial beginning to nub of time. Okay, so they're looking at the crucial point of time, you know, where it all came together, you know, made sense. Then you've got the syllabus Bornington shacks, so you're starting to look at the apartheid era. So the shanty towns, locations, etc. Just remember when Jeremy Cronin was born and the time that he would have lived in. Then you've got the train, so again, technology, the mines, people starting to look for gold and diamonds and minerals and all of those things. Okay, so progression of time. Then you've got the progression of language. Okay, so you're looking at inarticulate grunt, stammer, call, cry, babble, tongue's knot. So think of a child who is learning to speak for the first time. And I know you all watch those vines and memes of children doing silly things, etc. So I'm sure there's one of them that you could find. So inarticulate grunt. Okay, when it just starts off with random sounds that make no rhyme or reason. Then there's a stammer. Okay, so we're trying to work on the words. We kind of got them, not quite. Then it becomes a call and a cry. So we've got ma, dad, etc. Tongue's knot. So we start practicing tongue twisters, or maybe there's a name that the little niece or nephew can't explain. And then they shorten it. What about words cut out of the stone? So think of the people with the hieroglyphics, the Egyptians, and the Rosetta Stone. And I'm not going to tell you what that is. You are going to go research it. It's very, very interesting. So, yeah, it'll be good for you to look it up. And then to trace with the tongue. So if you're learning a language, you now look at how the words form in your mouth, okay? Later on, they've got to voice, so you've also got an underline there. So you're basically looking at people learning how to speak. Languages, so they make reference to voices, saying, telling you. They've got kale, pan, fontein, which are suffixes for Afrikaans words. You've got vleibank or vleibank. You've got stompie, stickfast, golovan, shongololo. Inflections, remember inflections have to do with change in pitch and tone. And ikwata bust five. Okay, so derogatory, it's in the poem. Okay, so the point is, if you've ever watched comedians, you know, taking people's accents and changing them, you know, they try to exaggerate them to make it more funny, all right? And I know you've watched those memes and vibes as well, so, you know, there we go. You know what I'm talking about. So you've got that, okay? It's the 5:15, okay? And chant and voices again. So the languages. Now, interestingly enough, he has also added the progression of a river and the progression of transport. So for those of you who also do geography, you will notice a couple of things that I'm speaking about, and it should jog a few memories from what you've learned in your textbooks. So what you've got here is babble. So if you have a small stream, sometimes when the water runs over the stones, it sounds like it's babbling. They talk about a babbling brook. You've got rivers. Now, Kale, Pan, and Fontaine are all things to do with rivers. Okay, parts of rivers, what they form, etc. Then you've got Vleibank. You've got mouth, so think river mouth. You've got the water table. Okay, so all of these words have to do with a river. And when you think of a river, it starts off very strong, very fast, very destructive. Okay, cuts right deep into the earth. It's where you get your waterfalls and rapids and things like that. Then as it eases out and collects everything that it's broken off from the earth's surface, you get the sediment, the rocks, the stones, the pebbles, branches, leaves, mud, etc. So it starts to widen and slow down. Okay, it becomes a little bit less deep. Okay, still dangerous, but less deep, little bit wider, slower. Okay, and often, the progression of a river is used to represent life, very much like a tree that's growing in the seasons. So these are the options that you've got. And then it gets to the end. Now, funnily enough, the end of the river is called the mouth of the river. And if you think of a person, the mouth is usually where food goes in. Okay, it's not the end. So what happens is the mouth of the river is the end of the river. It's sort of, that's it. Okay, the river's done its job. It's reached the end of its course. So think of a language. Okay, there's always place to master it, but at a certain point, once you've learned enough vocabulary and the grammar, you're sorted. Then progression of transport. So you've got wagon trails, you've got the train, and you've got the mine gangs, because obviously involved with people moving from the locations, townships into the cities, you need the taxis, buses, other forms of transport. So it's going back from ox-drawn wagons to trains, taxis, etc. Okay, going from animals pulling you along to maybe coal-powered trains to engines in taxis. So again, it's looking at that development, and that is the key aspect. When you take the development, the mastery of a language, and you add it to the infinite verbs, what you have is a constant development of language. Language grows. Languages that don't grow, that don't adapt, that don't change, die out. Okay? They become what is known as dead languages. People don't use them anymore. They become obsolete. There's a lovely word for you. So when you learn how to speak, things are going to change. Vocabulary is added, some is removed, some words change meaning. Okay? If any of you end up studying linguistics, it's absolutely fascinating how that all happens, and just what you can learn about a culture based on their language and inflections and tone and suffixes and prefixes and sometimes the lack of them. Okay, it's really brilliant. It's absolutely fascinating. So you'll notice I said in the beginning that it never really seems to end. Okay, and when you're learning a language, you master it. Same as learning an instrument. You learn the basics, but then you have to master it. Okay, so people can learn another culture's language, but unless you are immersed in that culture, you're going to miss out on the nuances, little things like the jokes, the puns, the irony that come from understanding the language, the culture, the community, the society, the history. And this is the point that I think Jeremy Cronin is trying to make, is that when it comes to a country, that is so diverse and varied, not just in its cultures, but in its languages, in its beliefs. You never really stop learning. It's always continuous, it always carries on. And in order to effectively communicate, you need to keep learning. You can never say at any point, I've arrived, I'm done, I'm finished, I know what I need to. There's always change, there's always additions, there's always things being deleted. Okay, so you have to keep on learning in order to keep up. Same with technology. Okay, every 2 years, the phone that you had, the technology is old, the computer technology is old. You have to keep with the times. Okay, so this is what I think he's trying to say, is that language progresses, life progresses, and trying to fit all of that together in such a complex country, you have to, go with it as well. You also have to continue learning, continue, reaching out, looking around you, etc. So just as with the other poem, the second video that I do will be going through the questions and the essay topic. Thank you very much.